Should Google expand into the ride-sharing market? Should Netflix make hardware devices to compete with the Facebook portal and Google Home? These are the product strategy questions. The product strategy questions test your high-level thinking around how to shape the future of a product or business. These questions bleed over into business knowledge, and they showcase the reason why product managers need to understand businesses in order to be successful in product management. The product strategy questions generally break down into three major categories. The first major category is defining a company strategy. Should Google do this? Should a company go into this direction? These company strategy questions are mostly open-ended and up for interpretation. What's most important in the company strategy questions is that you have a perspective and you can defend that perspective using evidence or examples of why you think that that's the right strategy for the company. Generally, it's helpful to prepare for these by reading about general company strategies. And one tip that we recommend for every single interviewee interviewing for a product strategy interview is to have already watched the keynote that the CEO gives about the company, or an interview with the CEO about the direction of the company. And not only watch that, but also have a perspective. Do you agree with that company strategy? Do you think that there's a different approach that could be effective with the company strategy? And coming into the interview already having those formulated thoughts will let you hit the ground running when you're asked questions about the company strategy or about similar company strategies. Next up, the main other type of product strategy question might be market expansion questions. So you might receive a question that's more about how to expand in a certain market. How can Netflix reach even more viewership? Or what is a strategy for how WhatsApp can be the main messaging app on all phones around the world? These questions focus more on your ability to take an existing product and improve the business strategy. Think of it like the product improvement questions that you might also be practicing for, where you're asked to improve a specific product. Except in this case, you're asked to improve the business strategy or the business model to understand how you might go to market with an even bigger market than what you currently have. In general, creative brainstorming ideas are really effective here in coming up with an effective answer. And then lastly, the other type of product strategy question that gets asked is when you're asked to have a business built on top of a technology. So for instance, you might say, we are now in possession of an incredible technology that lets users talk to each other real time with just the click of one button, and it's sort of like a walkie-talkie that you can have on you. When anywhere you go, you click a button and you can communicate with a user in any region, irrespective of bandwidth constraints or LTE or anything like that. How would you build a business around that new technology? So these questions, again, are more creatively oriented and more about going out and finding different customer segments. So thinking about what customer segments would be appropriate for this particular technology and how would we customize this product or this technology to align to that customer segment. And so this one is much more about finding user segments and then finding ways to customize the business to map to those user segments. Again, these product strategy questions, those are just three of the types that you might see. There are a variety of different ones, but ultimately product strategy questions are so hard because there's no clear answer, there's no clear framework. There's certainly different approaches that you can discuss and different frameworks that you can pull in, but ultimately what interviewers want to hear is your genuine thoughts on how to actually take the product in a different direction and what trade-offs you would consider. One thing that can be really helpful here is a simple cost-benefit analysis, and we do recommend doing that where you need to if you're making a decision between two different directions. But ultimately, again, if there's one thing that I'd recommend or one tip that I want you to take away from this video, it would be making sure that your answers feel genuine and you're actually thinking about the problem. Don't overuse a framework, but instead, if you were actually at the company, if you were actually the CEO of the company, what would you think about and how would you go about that problem? And how might you use your insights from users as a product manager in order to solve that product strategy problem? Now, we have a ton of videos in this course that will showcase to you what a good product strategy interview looks like. And we also have a bunch of practice modules where you can practice by submitting your own answers or finding a peer to practice with to ace the product strategy interview.